And our next panel today is going to be moderated by someone many people consider to be the vanguard of tech journalism. Mike Butcher, the editor-at-large for TechCrunch, will be moderating our next panel about growing global, what a general expansion strategy conversation could look like. Joining him for this discussion is Dan Westgarth, the COO at Deel, a global payroll startup. We also have Felix Oswald, the co-founder and CEO of GoStudent, a Vienna-headquartered digital learning platform. Unfortunately, Suhail Samir, the CEO of BharatPe, may be a little delayed to this panel. Fingers crossed he makes it, but in the interest of time, we are kicking off. A round of applause, please, for our panel this afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Mike Butcher. I'm editor-at-large for TechCrunch, a small news outlet with 20 million readers every month. And I'm based out of London, and I've got a great set of panelists today for you. Unfortunately, as has been pointed out, that we gather that Suhail from BharatPe is stuck in traffic, so may not make it. But we have some great guys for you. So let me introduce Dan Westgarth, who's CEO of Deel. Round of applause, everybody! Yay! And also we've got we've got Felix from GoStudent over here. And what we're going to be talking about is scaling up, growing generally. And these companies, just to sort of put you in the picture, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, are pretty, they're scaled quite something. Deel has raised $697 million, is that right, roughly?
That's roughly correct.
That's roughly correct, according to Crunchbase, our former alma mater. And I think you're on the 950, something like that right now. Nearly $1 billion.
Nearly $1 billion, yes.
Not bad, not too shabby. So they must know something about growing companies and scaling companies. Let me turn to you first, Felix. I mean, GoStudent's really quite a fascinating story, isn't it? Because it started with a WhatsApp group, didn't it?
Yes, we started a business 7 years ago. The fundamental problem in education is teacher shortage. So you have teacher shortage all over the world. And 7 years ago we said, okay, let's fix that and let's build a WhatsApp service where kids can ask questions and then we answer these questions on WhatsApp and redirect them to teachers. So this is how it started. No capital available, but it quickly scaled. And later on, over the following years, we figured out the right business model.
Well, you clearly did. And I guess the pandemic really helped to some extent, didn't it?
Yeah,
because, kids needed to suddenly learn remotely.
Yeah, there's two things that's quite interesting. I mean, first and foremost, the awareness for online teaching. So our main service today is online and offline tutoring. So we connect children in the age of 6 to 19 to world-class teachers, both online and offline. And because of the pandemic, the awareness for online massively increased. So even my grandmother knows what Zoom is. So this definitely helped. But the other thing, which is quite interesting, because of the school lockdowns during the pandemic, kids are currently experiencing learning gaps between 4 and 15 months. So because of the school lockdowns, kids all over the world were missing out massively on education. And that's why right now, after the pandemic, when schools reopened, there's an even bigger boom for services like tutoring services, because they all need something.
And they have to catch up, I guess, yeah. It's been a fascinating story, especially given global events. Now, Dan, with Deel, you're COO of Deel. You guys have scaled. In a way, you're definitely sort of a company in the right place at the right time because you handle worldwide compliance, payroll, and HR in over 150 companies, so that other companies can expand using your platform. So not only are you guys expanding, but you're helping other companies expand as well.
Exactly. I mean, Felix is one of my clients, which is pretty cool.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. We've got a conflict of interest clash going on here. You're gonna have to be nasty about him now. Otherwise, we're gonna be suspicious.
It's actually a really interesting point. So yeah, as you said, Deel helps companies hire internationally. We have about just over 10,000 companies on the platform today. and we help them hire people, employees, contractors in about 150 different markets. And to the point of right place at the right time, similar to Felix, the pandemic was pretty interesting for us.
Yeah.
The pandemic, as everyone knows, puts up geo-based barriers, location-based barriers. You know, people were forced to work from home. Certain people were forced to work from different countries. And that really, I think, accelerated a movement which was always inevitable. I think that we've seen globalization happen over the past however many decades, and now we're entering a new phase. And we like to think of that as the future of work. And Deel is powering that. Deel is helping companies hire anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the shift to remote work has just been astounding, and also I think the shift to hybrid working as well, because people now, work in a hybrid manner. Not necessarily. I don't hardly know any companies that do 9 to 5, 5 days a week anymore, actually. But I mean, let's do sort of conceptual stuff, and then let's talk about a little bit about the region, because obviously you guys are playing in the region. So first of all, what do you think, Felix? What would you think? Either in your company or observing other companies, what do you think have been the biggest mistakes that companies can make when they're trying to scale up?
Scaling up in other countries or in one particular market?
I think going international.
I mean, the first thing you need to answer for yourself is, do you keep the company very centrally, right? So basically you centrally steer the company into the markets, or do you want to decentralize your company more and you want to give, let's say, local P&L ownership to each market? So how much ownership do you want to give to the market? In our case, because we have central processes, we have the overall organization extremely central, all the processes very much aligned in all the markets. So when we expand in a different market, we hire local operational teams, and then we let them execute on our central processes. That might work for us, but it might not work for other companies that rely on very heavy local elements of that market. The second thing is, you need to have strong leadership also in the market. You need to have a person on the ground that is a strong executor that you can trust, and that also builds up a nice culture in this market. And I think if you have the right team in the beginning, you also have a clear vision how you want to scale it in that market, then you will definitely be successful.
I see. So you've gone for more of a centralized approach. Do you feel that gives you a better overview of where the business is going, the future trends?
Yes, it allows you to be, in our case, it allowed it to be faster. The disadvantage of having it very central, when you hire for local leadership in the market, often if you want to get really senior people, they also want to own then the P&L, and they want to have kind of the whole reporting structure in the market. So That's always like the tricky part, how to find the right balance there.
And Dan, you were at Revolut, and you helped Revolut grow internationally, especially in the US. So you've done it at Revolut, and now you're doing it as COO at Deel. You must know the A to Z of scaling internationally by now.
Yeah, I like to bring in a third reference point, which is the ride-hailing industry.
Yeah.
And I think that domestic velocity is really important. So before making the decision on whether to go to a foreign market, you should measure and establish if your domestic velocity is at the highest possible rate. Otherwise, international expansion can become a distraction, and it's a huge undertaking. And if you don't do it in the correct way, it can become counterintuitive. You're going to be burning a ton of money, losing a ton of focus. And we've seen other European companies go to the US, go to Asia, and then withdraw. Number 26 is a great example. Went to the US, spent a ton of money, didn't nail that international expansion, and said, "Oh dear, guys, we're going to have to withdraw."
So it's a bit like the Roman Empire. Don't expand beyond your borders too fast, and
Perhaps.
leave Rome undefended.
Perhaps.
To some extent.
it also, I mean, it's a good point because you also need to ask yourself, why do you want to expand to other markets? Is it really necessary?
Right.
Is your own domestic market maybe not big enough? Of course, for investors, if you want to raise a lot of money, you need to show investors that there's a big addressable market. So one of the big advantages expanding into other markets is by the possibility increasing your overall market size, and that also deserves then higher valuations, and you raise more capital for that.
Well, there is always that, the strategic idea of being able to, using global expansion as a way to boost your valuation to some extent, which is another interesting trick. But let's take some of those learnings and apply them to this region. This region is expanding, and certainly in things like education, online education, it's been totally booming, I think, in the last few years. What are your are you expanding in this region, in the GCC or in widely across MENA?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part about education, historically, it was always extremely local. Every country has its own school system, every country has its own curriculum. So there were actually not many education businesses that managed to scale rapidly across markets. And that also basically allowed us to build a strong USP, expanding into different regions. And this region here in particular is also for us on the roadmap going forward for end of the year.
Right, I see. So, I mean, is that why you're here, or are you just here to network?
It's a combination. I really like being here. It's crazy how fast the city develops here, and to see all the innovation going on. I mean, every time you go here after a couple of months, it's just breathtaking to see how fast the city develops, how innovative it wants to be. Lots of interest also in education, the panel discussion today, so yeah.
Yeah, of course. And Dan, so is Deal expanding in this region, in the MENA region?
Yeah, absolutely. We've set up over 80 entities over the last 12 months, and I've got a few stories to tell. I mean, scaling sounds really glamorous. Jet set lifestyle, going to visit all of these different countries, hire people, incorporate entities. In actual fact, it can be the opposite.
Right.
A ton of paperwork, a ton of
a lot of lawyer meetings.
Yeah, but it even goes a level deeper than that. A lot of trips to the notary. An inside story is one of our execs would actually travel with a very small USB printer in their luggage.
Yeah.
So they could plug that printer in when they arrived at the hotel, print off documents, visit the notary, and then file. So to answer your question, yes, we've expanded into Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, the UAE, and we have more countries on the horizon.
Oh, I see. Yes, that's still an issue, isn't it? Expanding internationally, having to go and talk to the local mayor to set up a company or something like that.
Yeah, I would just say on that point, the government of the UAE has been particularly amazing. It's been, I would say, one of the more pleasant and efficient experiences of setting up an international subsidiary here in the UAE has been really good.
You're not just saying that.
For sure not.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, generally speaking, like, there are all sorts of things for growth. What's some of the sort of, culture is important in startups, isn't it? And taking your team along with you. Do you find that it's tough to get, especially you guys both, your companies have both respectively raised very substantial amounts now. That means you've got several hundred people probably on your books now. Maintaining that culture is kind of hard, though, isn't it, Felix?
Yeah, there's two things that definitely helped us building a great culture. The first thing is the onboarding. When you onboard people in other countries, what we always did, we invited them to the headquarters, and we tried to give them a really awesome time in the first couple of days. That's for us super important, because by traveling to the headquarters, meeting the other people there, you can really, you feel the energy, you can align them, you can show them what the vision of the company is, and you can spend also a good time with them. And the second thing is, once the organization grows, today we are over 2,000 employees. If you want to build a great culture, it's also a lot about communication. You need to communicate. to make sure that kind of everybody is aligned, everybody understands why is he or she is there, what are we building here, what is the vision of the company, what are we disrupting, that they're part of a mission. And when you create this feeling that you're part of a mission and you disrupt something, then people are also willing to put a lot of energy and effort into that business.
I noticed that, speaking of culture, Deal is hiring a social media nomad to work with their team for 6 months from wherever they can, and they're going to be working out of a van called the Deal Mobile. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story. We kind of tested the proof of concept. One of our operations teammates was really interested in this concept, so I'm not sure if we purchased it or leased it, but effectively put together the Deal Mobile, and Kevin is his name. Kevin took the Deal Mobile on a tour around the US. He went just about everywhere, many states, and it worked really well. He was able to live and work and do everything that he needed to do while in the Deal Mobile.
Right.
So we thought, well, this is fantastic, and we've got quite a lot of PR traction from this domestically in the US.
Yeah.
Let's do it globally.
So you're going to... So, I mean, doing it in the US, that's pretty easy, isn't it? I mean, let's do it in Europe somewhere, you know, or somewhere, or Asia, perhaps.
Well, New Zealand. The
Or
Deal
New
Mobile
Zealand.
is going to be sent to New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
And whoever takes the position will manage our social media from the Deal Mobile.
Right, okay. Isn't that just going to prove to make everybody else in the team jealous?
I don't think so. We have our own internal team. We're about 1,500 people. I can't give you a precise number because we're currently integrating an acquisition. But out of those 1,500 or so people, we're in 82 different countries. So we have just about every religion, culture, many languages, just about every time zone.
Yeah.
And working norms are very different. You know, in America, someone's working style is just so incredibly different from somebody that works for us in Mauritius, or somebody who lives in a van in New Zealand. So
Yeah.
I don't think envy and jealousy really comes into it at all.
Fair enough, I guess. But yours is quite an unusual company in a way, isn't it? Because it's, you know, it's doing this sort of infrastructure layer for other companies that try to expand.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is, have you got, how many competitors have you got? Many competitors in your space?
Yeah, it's an interesting industry because it's been around, or employer of records have been around for decades.
Right.
So there's about 10 large incumbents and then 3 or 4.
They tend to be more service companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're going like more like a tech platform play.
We're the largest internet first, tech first player.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. But of course, there's always a downside to expanding. I know, GoStudent, you had to sort of let some people go, some of your staff go recently. That was in the news. Was it a significant proportion of your staff, or was it to do with the macro economy at the moment, or the recession, or?
Yes, I think, I mean, most companies adjusted their growth plans for the coming year. Last year, it was also, I think, part of the last panel discussion. It was all about growth. And we also, in our case, we readjusted our growth expectations for next year. And given that we have a high amount of operational people, you just need less operational people to achieve that growth. So this is the background of that.
I see. So you're achieving the same kind of growth, and you just don't need those extra people you might have had previously.
Correct.
And Dan, did you have you guys had to retrench it at all, or are you still on a kind of upward path?
No, we haven't, but I would note that currency markets are particularly interesting right now, specifically US publicly traded companies, given the strengthening of the dollar and the weakening of foreign currency. Those US publicly traded companies with operations outside the US are really tightening up ship in, say, operations in France, UK, and so forth. So in general, we are seeing similar cases to what Felix just described.
Right, I see. Well, we're just about out of time, and I was just wondering if we want to do some Q&A shortly. Let's do some Q&A. Let me ask one more question before we do some Q&A. So if you have any questions, guys, have a think for 10 seconds about Q&A. You want to do? We're out of time? Okay. Well, shall we wrap it up? Okay. Let's wrap it up then. I apologize. Looks like we're out of time, but thanks very much, Felix from GoStudent and Dan from Deal.
Thanks.
We have more time. You see, this is the problem. I can't hear you. Okay, we do have some time. Do we have any questions? If anyone has any questions. If we don't have any questions, I'll ask a couple more at the end. Right. Okay, my last final questions in that case. If you could do this all over again, would you change anything? Would you take a different path? Dan?
Such a hard question. Of course, yeah. I think you learn from your mistakes. So there are certain things you would change for sure. Thinking on my feet of what those are right now, I can't cite anything.
Bit hard to say.
Sure.
You've done okay so far. You're giving yourself a Hail Mary pass. Felix?
It's a tough one, but we founded the business 2016, and from 2016 all the way to 2019, we had a lot of trial and error figuring out the right business model. Because in education, it's always difficult because the user, in our case the student, is not paying for the service. It's the parent. So figuring out and listening even closer to how families currently do it, we kind of ignored that in the first couple of years, and that also took us then a bit longer to crack the business model. So listen to your customer target group really super closely, understand how they are currently doing it. This is something I would have done.
This is a good idea. Listen to the customers. Right, gentlemen, thanks very much. We're all out. Thanks so much. Cheers.